And I'm John.
And this is Comicsplaining.
The one where it's Jover.
He's been biding his time. But it's Jover.
Here's how Bernie can still win.
True. Yeah, this will be 2 weeks late by now, but this is the day that Joe Biden announced his, unnomination.
I know it's true, because I got a letter from him specifically saying that he is out of the race and he supports Kamala Harris.
He's gonna be sitting down watching Columbo, drinking some prune juice.
I mean, he's the right age for it. He would watch Columbo.
He's earned it, motherfucker.
Yeah, they need to stop weakened Bernie's-ing him.
Oh, God.
Because that's what they've been doing for the last 4 years. Come on, especially with this election cycle. Whatever else, he's barely there.
Oh, man, all I'm gonna say is that if people are openly speculating if the president is sundowning on the debate stage, it doesn't actually matter whether he is or he isn't.
That's true. That is true. It really doesn't matter. And we've had worse. I cannot for the life of me remember his name, but there was a president in the 19th century who had a stroke and his wife basically ruled for him during. But it was the 19th century, and the presidency was different then. You could do a lot less.
Isn't there a case to be made that at the end of FDR's presidency, Eleanor Roosevelt was practically running things?
And he was a much more hands-on president, too. He's the man who expanded what it meant to be president of the United States.
Isn't there a case that Nancy Reagan's horoscope was running the presidency?
I mean, it's generally believed that Reagan may not have been all there by the end of it. So the only problem is Reagan wasn't running for re-election.
Yup. Anyway, this week we've got one of my favorite X-Men stories, the graphic novel God Loves, Man Kills.
You have been talking about this for so long.
That would be because it's one of my very favorites. It is probably my second favorite, maybe my first. It really depends on the day. You'd have to ask me then.
Well, you've been talking about this for so long, and I suspect I know the gist of the story, even if I don't know that I know the gist of the story.
It's written by Christopher Claremont. Well, la-di-da.
Right, because this is a Marvel graphic novel!
Written by Christopher Claremont. Penciled and inked by Brent Anderson. Colored by Steve Oliff. And lettered by Tom Orzechowski, with the cover by Brent Anderson.
So, because this is a Marvel graphic novel, this has more in common with Scott Pilgrim than it does with normal X-Men, physically?
I don't actually know about the physical format Scott Pilgrim was published in.
I mean, it's basically just manga written by a Canadian.
Well, yeah, it's books, but there are different formats of books.
Yeah, it's basically just manga written by a Canadian.
Okay, that gives me a better idea.
Like, the original was even in black and white.
I imagine this is more like trade paperbacks.
Because I don't actually know what this would have looked like in person, whereas most of our comic books, I know what those look like because they look like comic books.
I'm guessing this is more like trade paperbacks. I've never actually seen it face to face. Would love to have a copy of it, though. One new name for us is Steve Oliff. He's another award winner for his coloring, one of the first revolutionary adopters of computer coloring, but I don't have a ton of personal information on the guy. Two children run through a Westport, Connecticut playground, but they run without any of the joy or at least hyperactivity that you'd expect from the activity. Mark and Jill run for their lives, though Jill, the younger of the pair, doesn't appear to fully grasp the severity of her situation.
Oh, this looks so ominous.
Their parents aren't with them, and they don't have a healthy lead over their pursuers. Mark manages to keep his little sister moving, but a moment later a gunshot cracks through the night and Mark collapses.
Oh boy. Oh boy. And I'm guessing the fact that they're black doesn't make it any more subtle about what's going on.
He urges her on to keep running, but Jill won't leave him. Enter their pursuers, the Purifiers. As they close in on the children, their leader draws her gun. After she brags about killing their parents, the wounded boy's temper flares, his eyes glowing, lighting up his face. What he would have done, though, we never see, as the lead Purifier's finger tightens on the trigger again, ending Mark's life. Jill doesn't understand, but she isn't in the dark for long, as moments later she is sent to join the rest of her family in the grave.
Well, also, the gun is very bright.
Under the cover of night, the bunch then string the bodies of the two children up on the swing set as an example of what happens to mutants.
Jesus Christ.
They don't remain hanging there until dawn, though, like the Purifiers would have liked. Sometime later, Magneto arrives on the scene. With a wave of his hand, the swing set gently disassembles into a somewhat more dignified resting place for the two children's bodies, resting Mark and Jill down upon it. Just the latest in a string of anti-mutant murders.
Well, may I be the first person in the history of words to say Magneto was right.
Wow, what an original string of words that I have never heard before.
Yes, I know, right? No one has ever said this before.
This is a brave and controversial stance you've taken, John.
Uh-huh. It is so brave, so controversial. I know, I bear this on my shoulders.
You're going to be getting hate mail for this one.
Yep, hate mail for days.
Send your hate mail to comicsplaining@gmail.com.
Please send it.
He closes their eyelids, and then his expression hardens, vowing vengeance against those who took these children's lives. No more will die at the hands of these monsters. We find ourselves next in a New York City skyscraper, the Stryker building.
Ah, that actually looks like a real building of the era. I don't think it's a real building, but it looks like a real building, which is impressive.
Here Reverend Stryker stands working on next Sunday's sermon. He's one of those preachers.
Well, he's not working out of a regular church, so he must be an evangelical.
Correct. As he's reviewing a Bible verse about stoning the wicked to death. But he's done with that for now, as he receives a buzz from his assistant. He's got some briefing tapes to review.
You know, most reverends don't have that kind of work.
He's got a couple extra jobs on the side.
Ah, irons in the fire, huh?
Those tapes tread outside the realm of religion. No, tonight the Reverend touches briefly upon each of the X-Men, reviewing their powers, including Ariel, which is a name for Kitty that I thought we passed on in favor of Sprite.
Ariel? And what's with the mask?
Who knows? What gives, Chris? His time overshoot must be really biting him in the ass now, though. 'Cause that's all he has time to study, and surely that's not all they know.
Wait, let's see. Okay, Wolverine, Canadian secret agent, skeleton laced with adamantium. That's about all we know about the man.
That's true.
That's not just all he knows. That's about all anybody knows. I love it.
That's all he knows. That's all we know. I guess that's all anyone knows. But Stryker has places to be, specifically ABC Studios.
Oh, as in the American Broadcast
Correct.
Company?
The ABC Studios.
I'm sorry. He's going to the Australian Broadcast Company?
Nope.
The Albanian Broadcast Company.
That's the one.
I don't even know if that's a thing.
That evening in Salem Center, the peace is broken when the door to Stevie Hunter's studio splinters outward, spilling two brawling youths out onto the sidewalk. Kitty Pryde seems to have the upper hand, and who's shocked given all her X-Men training?
You know, that's fair considering she's now a world-class gymnast.
Yep, and she's threatening to beat Danny's face in.
Ooh.
Ilyana Rasputina dashes out behind them, trying to pull Kitty off the boy. That's when Ilyana's big brother rounds the corner, surprised by all the commotion. Pyotr's appearance on the scene distracts Kit Kat long enough that Danny pops a punch off, decking her straight in the right eye.
That was a mistake.
Peter finally rushes in, separating the fighters, but Kitty's still trying to get at Danny, furious over what he said. Finally, one more player bursts onto the scene, the dance teacher herself. Stevie demands to know what the hell happened to the door. Kitty explains that she popped off because Danny was running his mouth.
Oh.
Danny backs her up, ready to spread the good word of the Stryker crusade to Stevie as well. His whole family are members of this crusade, after all.
Oh, no.
Piotr takes over trying to hold Kit Kat back as she rages over the movement's fervent hatred of mutant kind.
Oh. Oh, no.
Daniel's undeterred, raving about the evils of mutanity and calling her a mutie lover. Finally, Piotr has heard enough, sternly suggesting David drop the matter.
Yeah, that's... Around him, that's probably a good idea.
Just in general, I mean...
Even if he's not Metal Peter...
Even if he wasn't a mutant, it would probably be a good idea.
Like, look, even if he wasn't Metal Piotr, he's Flesh Piotr. Flesh Piotr is still, like, head and shoulders taller than this guy.
All I'm saying is that Kitty's sweet on him and he's huge,
yes.
And she's pissed.
Yes, and he might rearrange this man's bodily layout.
He grumbles about how this isn't over, and then the boy makes himself scarce. Stevie tries to calm Kitty down, reminding her how unfair that fight was, and that they're just words.
Ooh.
But Kitty doesn't care, outraged by those words, likening them to him calling her an N-word lover.
Which is censored in this comic. I'm very curious if that's an edit or if that's in the original.
Now's the time to mention the warning Marvel has placed at the beginning of the issue, because the word is reasonably censored here, but this is a new upload.
Ah.
The first time I read it, I don't believe it was there, if I recall correctly.
Oh boy.
The reading at the front of the book is, this previously published content includes negative depictions or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Social change is a journey, and we must acknowledge where we've come from to build a more inclusive future. Now, I think there's a lot to talk about here. This is a fairly generic apology, and I can think of at least 3 issues we've covered that could have used that warning and didn't get it.
I might not be able to think of 3 off the top of my head, but I know there were...
The French Polynesian locals, anybody?
Oh, no, them, right, I remember them. They were generic islanders from a cartoon in the 50s.
Ready to sacrifice Wanda to their volcano god?
Yeah, just generic islanders. Never mind, that's not what French Polynesia is.
Not that I think this doesn't deserve a heads up, it just seems disingenuous when it's a warning about stereotypes rather than hurtful language. Like they just kind of slap this warning on anything big that gets a pushback rather than applying it line-wide across older content with context-appropriate warnings.
I'm guessing they don't. Whoever did that isn't really sure what the problem is.
If you'd read that warning, would Kitty Pryde dropping the N-word be what you expected to be coming?
No! No, I would not be expecting that, and I'm not sure that warning changes that, to be honest, now that I think about it. And, okay, I'm gonna be... This is good. This is actually a bit of a hot take, but I'm not sure the censorship changes what is happening here, like, mechanically. And we could get into where offensive language belongs in fiction, and that would be a whole different podcast.
I think the mutant metaphor generally, it can go one way or the other, but like in this instance, where he was saying the mutie lover thing was close enough to walking the line, you pushed it a little bit too far here, Chris, and distastefully so.
That's fair enough. That is a fair interpretation.
Especially after Kitty runs off and Stevie tearfully admits that Kitty was right.
Oh boy.
Chris, you don't have enough melanin in your face for this.
Okay, I'm willing to argue that maybe there's a place for slurs in the right context, which is a hot take. That genuinely a hot take, but Chris Claremont is too white to be saying this. I'm sorry.
To be putting these words in the mouths of his black characters?
Yes. Yes. It's one thing to have Kitty Pryde say that. I can I think I could be okay with that. It's another thing for her to think that.
I think it's a bit much for her to even say it, but it's gone so far beyond now.
I'm wondering if he was trying to be edgy.
Anyway, let's make fun of Kitty. She thought it was okay because she has a black friend.
Oh, God. She did, didn't she? Oh, no. Oh, no. Kitty, you knew that was wrong to say.
So that was all a lot. The Rasputins then head off to accompany Kit Kat home, leaving Stevie alone on the sidewalk. When she heads back inside, she has no idea that she's being watched. Two of the purifiers sit in their van along the curb. The driver, George, wants to pop her in the worst way for her mutant sympathizing.
Jesus.
But that's not their mission. They're just here to watch. So George reluctantly lets it go, instead clearing Operation Headhunter to go ahead.
That's a fun name.
Yeah, I'm sure that's nothing ominous. The X-Men arrive back home shortly afterwards, now running late. If they're not quick, they're going to miss Xavier's television appearance. Kit Kat makes a head upstairs, but Logan first stops her, remarking on her black eye. Kitty's disappointed that she lost the fight.
That tracks, actually.
He presses her for more information, but a downcast Kit Kat clams up.
I imagine the advice he would give is, you should have killed him. Look, this is Logan. He kills people for a living.
I don't think he would have advised a child to, though,
Yeah, I suppose. Should have broken some bones.
He's a better dad than he is a person.
You know what? That's probably true. I haven't really witnessed him being much of a dad.
He picks up teenage strays like nothing.
I have seen that happen, but I mostly see him killing people when he's not picking up the occasional teenage stray.
But while she's off changing out of her dance clothes, Illyana tells everyone else what happened anyway.
Oh, boy.
Kitty Kat makes it down just in time to catch the opening of Nightline.
And it really is ABC News Nightline. We're just using trademarks.
I told you it was
out in the open.
ABC News.
I know, but we are straight up using trademarks. This is suable.
Here we meet up with our old buddy John Cheever to host a discussion between Charles Xavier, in his capacity as an expert on genetics, and leader of the evangelical ministry, the Stryker Crusade, William Stryker.
Aha.
Chuck starts by pointing out that mutants aren't a monolith and should instead be judged as individuals rather than as a collective.
Oh, boy.
Stryker then interrupts, protesting that the common man has little ability to protect themselves against the powers of the mutants. That on top of Senator Kelly's concerns that mutants are a threat to national security. And then ABC cuts to commercial.
Oh, fun.
Illyana wants to joke a little bit about it, but no one else seems to be in a great mood about it, even in the control room.
Oh, right. Listeners, for those of you who are too young to remember what television was like, commercials used to happen at times that were planned. They were not random, that just cut into any old point in whatever video you were watching. They were planned, and everyone knew this was going to happen.
I don't know, I feel like most of our listeners are old folks.
That might be true, but I feel I have to explain how commercials used to work, because this was a thing in the age of live television. You weren't watching a recording, you were watching it live.
Even in the ABC control room, there seems to be some concern over the Reverend statements, particularly once Stryker starts getting into whether or not mutants even count as human. The operators seem to be in agreement that Xavier's in the right, but the problem is the Reverend is used to playing for the TV. The Professor, not as much.
So this is Nixon Kennedy.
As the debate ends, Kit Kat digs out her Limp Bizkit CDs because our girl's ready to break stuff.
Wait, seriously?
Nope. She proposes a group session in the danger room, and everybody is on board, though they're all reasonably on edge, knowing the extent of Reverend Stryker's following. At the studios, too, everyone, including Charles, seems to be in agreement that Chuck got stomped in the debate.
Rip Charles Xavier.
Scott and Aurora discuss the matter off to the side, with Scott delivering a burn to the professor's grim looks as a cherry on top.
Wow, way to murder the already downed man. What's wrong with you?
Some kind of son, huh?
Well, to be fair, Xavier was a mind inside a brood, so maybe he's just not on the ball anymore.
A moment later, Scott's bumped from behind by a young woman, one of Stryker's associates, before she reports back to her boss that they're ready to strike in Central Park.
Fun. This is gonna be fun.
Back in the danger room, Illyana's voice rings out clearly from the control room, outlining the mission parameters, and I'm just going to read them because the summary will just make the next few pages confusing. Your primary objective is to protect the Mannequinov family. Papa, Mama, Ivan, and little Svetlana.
The Mannequinov family. Amazing.
Secondary objectives are Wolverine, to escape from the cage without cutting through its bars. Ariel, to use your powers offensively. Colossus, to defeat the robot. And Nightcrawler, to move that module onto the target grid. Its mass will trigger a pressure relay and end the sequence. Everyone got that? The robot starts off on the offensive, firing missiles at the Mannequinovs. Without the same X-Men who so callously placed them in danger, they would surely be destroyed.
Oh.
Ariel's on it. She phases through the missiles, destroying their electronic guidance systems in the process, and the missiles go wide, exploding safely out of range of the Mannequinovs.
Lucky.
Meanwhile, Wolverine attempts to pick the lock to his cell.
Oh my god, he is! He's trying to pick the lock with a claw!
With one gleaming claw. And Nightcrawler attempts in vain to bamf the target onto the pressure block.
Oh, that one makes a little bit more sense than what Wolverine's doing over there.
Looking at how badly things are going, Kitty proposes they mix things up.
Well, yeah, obviously these tasks are not good tasks for any of them. Move the heavy thing. Maybe give that to Colossus. It's like she assigned roles to the wrong people intentionally.
Duh. And so they do, instead targeting one another's opponents. Ariel phases through the robot, disrupting its systems, and in turn, Colossus blocks more missiles from striking the mannequins. Next, Nightcrawler attempts to help free Wolvie, but it's not that effective. Still, it gives Logan an idea. Instead of cutting through the bars, he reaches up to slice through the chain, plopping the cage down with a jolt on the pressure plate.
I suppose that's one way to go about doing it.
He's not heavy enough to trip the sensor, but that's okay. Piotr is free to help with that now, able to chuck that module with wild abandon. Kurt bamfed Logan out of the cage just in the nick of time, and just like that, the test is ended.
Okay. Kurt, real good on that. Logan probably wouldn't have died, but you might have if you hadn't been quick.
I don't know, that looks pretty flat.
No, well, okay, right. This is before Wolverine is fucking immortal.
Back at the studio, the Rolls pulls away from the curb and out onto the street. As they get going, Xavier notes, unnerved, that Stryker had side screens going the entire interview, and it puts him on edge.
That's fair, actually, considering.
He's unsure if they knew about him, or if it was just paranoia on the Reverend's part.
They know about him.
They don't notice that they picked up a tail. At first, driver Rocco hangs back, giving them plenty of space to step into the trap, waiting until the car turns to head through Central Park to signal to a waiting team that it's time to go. The X-Men have basically no warning that it's going to happen until moments before the rocket is fired, impacting and destroying the Rolls.
Oh, that's just one panel, isn't it? Like, the
yes.
Progression of movement over the course of a panel. Love that.
Yep, that's all over one panel. I forget the name for that technique. There's a name for it.
Is there? I didn't know that. But I love it. I didn't know it was in vogue in this era of comics.
Somewhere Chuck's insurance agent just got another unexpected migraine.
Oh yeah! This is the same roles, isn't it?
Well, it's probably the replacement roles from one of the past incidents.
How many times has Charles Xavier lost his roles?
The car goes rolling, giving all of its occupants a real rattling, though so far they're all still alive. That won't last long if they don't get out now.
That's fair. Most people don't survive. Burning car.
Well, not to mention they took one rocket blast. Who's to say there's not another one coming?
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that.
With the professor stunned, not the leader Scott takes over, punching an exit out of the rolls with his eyes.
Right. He's still not the leader. No.
He then orders Roro to cover their exit with a fog bank.
Okay, did he ever actually officially rejoin the X-Men?
I don't know that he did.
That makes it even better. He's just hanging around as part of the team, and he never really officially rejoined. He never asked. He's just there.
I think they all just accept that he's back now.
Of course they do. It's unspoken. But the thing is, this is enough of an organization at this point that it kind of needs to be spoken, because Aurora and Scott have had battles about
who's in charge.
Yes. That's why it needs to all be spoken. I realize most people don't want to talk about it because that would be awkward, and you're bringing up a bunch of stuff that you probably don't want to with the guy you probably don't want to bring it up with, because he left because of his dead girlfriend. And that's
their
awkward.
Dead girlfriend.
Yes. Yes. And that's really awkward. But you need to have a talk about who's in charge. You actually need to talk about this, guys. It's important.
Scott's about to climb free of the car when 2 gunshots crack out through the night, striking first he, then Aurora down, before another rocket strikes the car, blowing the wreckage to further smithereens.
These people are really badly kitted out. That is not a gun you would normally snipe with. Yeah, believe it or not, they're still using World War II era rifles for that particular role. And they were definitely using them then. And I don't think that's a real shoulder-mounted, what are they called? That's not a rocket launcher, per se. That is a, oh man, it's gonna be killing me. The gun is realistic, the rocket launcher is almost certainly not. But it's good to know that the X-Men here are dead.
I expect that the artist has more exposure to a gun than a rocket launcher.
That's fair.
Back at the mansion, the X-Men chipperly look over their scores. All but Wolverine, who's having a toot about it, cutting off the head of Papa Mannequinov as he leaves.
Oh.
As the rest follow him out of the danger room, the phone begins to ring, so naturally Kurt goes to answer. After a short moment, his face falls as he receives the terrible news from the NYPD.
To shreds, you say?
All 3 of the others are gone.
To shreds, you say?
To shreds. The next day comes and Kitty isn't taking the news well. While the others have all headed into the city, when Illyana catches up with Kitty, she's curled up by the side of the lake. She tries to comfort her friend, but Kitty just snaps at her. But Yana doesn't give up, gently reminding Kit Kat that they were also her friends.
Wait, I'm just thinking. So, Scott and Aurora just came back to Earth.
Right.
And revealed that they weren't dead.
Right.
With the rest of the gang.
Right.
And then, days later, to shreds, you say?
You got it.
Amazing.
That's the last bit of pressure it takes for the dam to break. Kitty holds on tight to Illyana, crying into her shoulder as she confesses that it's hard to believe that they're gone.
Well, it's even harder for me to believe it, considering I know the future, but...
Come on now, that's not a fun way to read the comics.
I know, but also, now having just done we think they're dead, but they're not, and then killing them, I'm starting to get a little annoyed by the stakes being, they're dead. They're all suddenly dead. That seems to be... Chris really likes jumping to that. This is fine as a story. It's more of a problem with the overall thing Chris likes to do with his story.
I can appreciate that.
Like, I don't think I mind this. In fact, this is great. Seeing Kitty finally feel something more than anger.
I think especially the fact that it's Aurora.
Yeah. But Chris Claremont has been doing this whole So they're definitely really dead.
I mean, Jean's definitely really dead, and she's stayed pretty definitely really dead.
I know, but then he started, and that was good. But then he started definitely really killing people. Only now we're having adventures with them.
The girls walk along the shoreline, discussing death and Pyotr Rasputin's thought on it.
Of course.
For the record, if not for the depths of grief, how could we truly measure the heights of joy? Ilyana calls her out again for a crush, and Kitty confesses, knowing what a big no-no it is.
Yeah. At some point, I don't know if they're going to ever actually address that beyond... It's a crush that shouldn't really be acted on. I know the future on other levels, but I don't really know how that works out exactly.
There comes a point where it cools down.
Ah, that's good, I suppose.
Just then, Ilyana startles, remembering what she came up here for. Up on the ridge, she saw some sort of equipment pointed at the mansion. When Kit Kat looks at it, she proposes that it's some sort of sensor. And if they want to find out who put it there, the easiest way is to break it.
I mean, you're not wrong. You break it and find out who comes to fix it.
So Kitty does just that, phasing through the sensor and shorting it out.
But I'd be a little more worried about security if someone's able to put this on the grounds without being noticed.
The girls then hide in the brush, waiting to see who will show their face.
Are they wearing ghillie suits?
No, I think they're just hiding in the bushes.
Okay, that makes more sense.
While down in Central Park, the X-Men investigate the crash scene. The cops say this was an accident. The car accidentally blew up twice and rolled over.
I mean, no, look, it's the NYPD. If the NYPD doesn't care if the people died, it's an accident. Of course, it was accidentally hit by 2 rounds that came out of nowhere that exploded it. This just accidentally happened, as it does in New York City, don't you know? It's New York, it's violent. The 80s are coming.
It happens all the time.
Exactly.
The 80s are coming. The 80s are here.
Oh, you're right. The 80s are here. So this is the most violent time in New York history.
CSI Logan's got some other ideas, though. The cops found 3 charred, unidentifiable bodies in the wreckage. But Logan knows with his keen senses and past the special operative, he knows all too well how to stage an accident and knows how to identify one as well. Scent's off. Something's sketch here, and he intends to get to the bottom of it. Calling up to Kurt seems to confirm that while they've been looking at the wreckage of one Rolls, some people have taken a distinct interest in theirs, because Charles, I guess, just keeps one waiting in the wings in case someone wrecks one.
Well, you know, when you have someone like Kitty Pryde, who sometimes destroys the house with a plane, so you need to have a spare everything.
At this point, it's just good foresight.
Yes, because eventually the main one is going to get destroyed, whatever it is.
As was borne out here.
Exactly.
2 of the purifiers sit in their sedan, monitoring the X-Men's car. They've got men on all the exits to the park, as well as some among the members of the NYPD, because Chris knows. I was just talking about the NYPD, but yep, Chris knows. But so far, their quarry remains in the park. At least for the moment. To their confusion, unexpected things begin to happen. Things like Pyotr exiting the park in costume, or Nightcrawler obscuring the view out of their windshield.
Oh, they've been made.
Or Wolverine giving the car door the can opener treatment and yoinking one of the zealots out.
They've been made, and this man is about to be introduced to Claws.
It looks like they're about to get some answers, but rather than be taken alive, the other woman jams her foot down on the gas pedal, ready to take Pyotr in the street with her as she goes.
Good God.
As the speeding car accelerates towards him, Pyotr transforms to Colossus, charging the car right back, determined to prevent it from hitting any innocent bystanders. While on top of the vehicle, Kurt is more worried about the driver. She's going too fast and won't survive the collision if he doesn't act now.
That's the point, my guy. She doesn't want to survive the collision.
With a quick double bamf, he grabs the young woman, porting off to the sidelines by her partner, just before slam! With a mighty blow, Piotr tears the engine out of the car, flipping it on its back like a turtle.
You know, while the rocket-propelled grenade car explosion felt very modern, there's something about the way this whole thing is done that feels very old-fashioned.
How do you mean?
Like, we have Flesh Piotr, and then we have Metal Piotr in the same panel. Or, well, lack of a panel. I guess that part's the modern part, but there's something about it just does not feel...
I don't know.
I'm not saying it's bad, it's just, well, it was the 80s. It's the midpoint between where we are now in comics and the start of the modern
We're not
era.
even to the modern comic era in the 80s.
I know, but we're somewhere between now and the start of, I get quote-unquote modern Marvel.
Petey is pretty pleased with himself, like, look at his little face.
Yeah, that's fair. He did just rip an engine out of a car.
Joking about his own strength versus the quality of cars these days. He's too caught up in the moment and doesn't see the armored figures rising out of the wreckage. What, were they in the fucking trunk?
Where did these people come from?
How did you miss them? It doesn't matter. One of them blasts the unaware teen in the back, and is about to finish him off when suddenly his armor betrays him.
Well, we know who's doing this.
The man and his partner are ripped into the air, where all their armor divests itself of them.
Yeah, it's no longer under their control.
For twisting itself into makeshift cocoons around the men. Only then do they drop down to rest with their comrades.
It is going to take so much work to get these people out of those metal cocoons. Like, the jaws of life will take forever.
I don't think so. I think we can get them back out of there pretty damn easily.
Yeah, but I think the one person who would be willing to get them out of there is not.
It's Magneto! Putting painfully unused smile muscles to work because he's here as a friend.
You know, I have a feeling even the word sounds rough in his mouth, because how often does he say that?
Meanwhile, back at the school, the girls have grown tired of lying in the tall grass waiting for someone to come inspect Kitty's handiwork. It's beginning to seem as if no one ever will, and they're just about ready to head back for the house when suddenly the sound of footsteps begin to come into the area.
Oh, hey!
It's a group of purifiers consisting of Anne from the Reverend's posse at ABC, Rocco the driver, and another of the armored heavies.
Why do they just have these guys?
And they quickly get to work on the scanner. Illyana's scared, but after all of her experience, Kitty wants to know what's going on, and begins to phase through the earth. Rocco's so efficient at his work that before she emerges, he's already got the scanner fixed and begins a scan, immediately picking up on Illyana hiding in the grass.
How does that even work?
She tries to run, but there's nowhere to go. Anne levels her gun at Illyana's forehead and fires point blank into the girl's head.
Oh no. Oh no.
The still-faced Kitty is horrified by the fate of her best friend, only for a wave of relief to wash over her when Annie clarifies that she's just stunned.
Stunned? With what? What kind of round is loaded like that, makes a gunshot like that, and stuns you?
A stun round.
A thing that definitely exists.
In the Marvelverse, sure.
Oh, Marvel.
They then gather up young Ms. Rasputina and bundle her up in their car. They were getting weird readings off her, somewhere between mutant and human, and they'd like to get to the bottom of it before murdering her.
With what I know about her, getting to the bottom of it may not be good for them.
Kitty does the only thing she can, phasing into the trunk of the car. But her intrusion is detected, so Anne presses the nerve gas button she has on her car for some fucking reason.
Jesus Christ.
To make her pay for the action. As these purifiers leave, the other four arrive, prisoners of the X-Men. They're unwilling to talk, but Wolverine thinks he has a remedy for that.
You know, he probably does.
He jams one fist under the chin of one of the purifiers, and then pops one claw to the side of his head, and then the other to the other side, bracketing his face. There's one claw left and one last chance to talk. The man's definitely sweating now.
And, you know, that metal cocoon probably already reeks of something. If it didn't before, it does now.
Then Magneto intervenes with his own idea.
That doesn't mean it's a kindness, my guy. Do not be prepared for kindness from him.
Logan comments that it's the man's lucky day. But not so much. You see, it's not a kinder, gentler solution that Mags has in mind. Instead, he uses the metal of what was once the man's own armor to torture him.
He's gonna break this man.
And as he and his comrades face pain, they scream their secrets, confessing Stryker's plan to use Charles to destroy all mutant kind.
You know, Magneto, my guy, torture doesn't actually work.
Well, it does here. But Piotr and Kurt don't particularly like what they had to do to get the information.
Wolverine does.
He sure does, but what's done is done. Charles Xavier is dragged before the cross atop the World Trade Center towers by his students.
What the fuck?
Despite the fact that he doesn't believe it, he is crucified nonetheless by monstrous versions of his students, their faces contorted into snarls of bared fangs.
You know, I realize this is only because of 9/11, but it feels really weird to interact with the World Trade Center like this. It's just a weird feeling.
It does, but, I mean, it's never going to stop, and we've got several years of comics left.
Oh, are we going to be interacting with the World Trade Center even more?
The World Trade Center will return in Avengers Infinity War.
Oh, no. Oh, I don't like the implications of that.
I can think of at least one comic book that will heavily feature the World Trade Center.
Getting destroyed?
I can neither confirm nor deny that fact.
Oh, no. But beyond that, they know how to draw. They sure know how to depict a crucifixion.
One at a time, they come to attack him. Nightcrawler's sharp fangs tear at his throat. Ariel reaches into his chest and removes his still-beating heart.
And he's not dead.
Wolverine slashes viciously at his chest, spilling his blood all over the rooftop, while Storm leaves him burnt and pained with a bolt of lightning. Last comes Cyclops, leading with cruel word for his mentor, and an all-engulfing fog emanating from his eyes.
Wow.
His torment continues until suddenly a piercingly bright shaft of light beams down from the heavens, destroying the X-Men and healing Charles of all his wounds. From within the light stands a robed figure, reaching out for him. Chuck reaches back, but after a moment hesitates, and that's all it takes to cast him back once more into darkness.
Huh. Okay. That's a lot of religious imagery.
Pretty heavy.
Yeah. What was that warning again? From the very beginning?
It was just about cultural sensitivity.
Yeah. I'm not...
This previously published content includes negative depictions or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Social change is a journey, and we must acknowledge where we've come from to build a more inclusive future.
I'm wondering, do religious fundamentalists get included in that kind of thing?
I doubt it. I heavily doubt that's what that was about.
Because even I know this isn't real. Because even I know this isn't real.
We cut to Xavier in a sensory deprivation tank. He's been brainwashed with drugs and electrode stimulation for 15 hours, fed by the psychic torment of Scott and Aurora.
You know, I knew it wasn't real, probably because if there was a devil here, we'd recognize him. Because I've met Mephisto. That's kind of a problem with Marvel using any of this imagery. Sometimes the devil is a vague, generic thing, and sometimes the devil is that one guy.
And sometimes he's one of the 12 Marvel Satans or what the hell ever.
Yeah, that's... I know it's Marvel wanting their cake and eating it too, but...
But here's the thing, I mean, it's all in his head, so it doesn't matter if it's real, it just matters if it's real to him.
That's true, and he is being tortured. He is very much being tortured.
And to him, their pain feels like a deliberate attack, but it's just another of the tactics employed by one of Stryker's cronies, Philip. He's confident they can get this done, but done on time, that's another matter.
Well, doing whatever they're doing to him, that's going to take however long it takes.
With a flip of the switch, he lifts the lid on their chairs, revealing the pained X-Men still with it and asking for answers. And surprisingly, there are some to be found beyond just fundamentalism.
Ah.
Once upon a time, Reverend Stryker was Army Ranger Master Sergeant William Stryker, on assignment to a nuclear test program. After the end of his tour of duty, the Strykers, William and his pregnant wife Marcy, headed off to visit family, only to be struck by tragedy, a car crash.
A mutant didn't do that.
When Marcy went into premature labor, it was William who helped her through the birth. However, when he saw the misshapen monster Mars gave birth to, it was also he who stabbed the baby and broke his wife's neck.
Okay, so he's just a monster.
Correct.
He is just... so there is technically a backstory, but it's just about him being an absolute bastard.
Correct. With his whole family gone, Stryker climbed into the twisted wreckage of their car, still leaking fuel, and lit a match.
Hold on. Is that also implying that mutants are made from radiation?
Yes.
That we're still banging that gong that... How old is that gong now? 60s?
It's so old it belongs in a museum!
Yeah. That's old news. Mutants aren't made by radiation, unless they are.
They're made by vaccines!
Exactly.
When the car blew, though, Will was spared, blown clear of the car and the fireball within. He then turned to drinking, determined to try in vain to forget the accident. All he did was earn himself trouble with the army.
I'm shocked.
One day, though, he learned about mutants, and on that day he knew what his son was. He prayed for guidance, and it was granted to him. Conveniently, you see, the sin was Marcy's. It's Adam and Eve, not Scott and Jean.
Wow.
Mutants are a sinful deviation, not made in the image of the Lord. But for them, she was used by the Lord to show him the truth.
There is so much hate in that logic that it has layers.
They cut through it like a cake.
And, I mean, you'll find some misogyny in there. You'll find racism in there. You'll find religious fundamentalism in there. There's a lot of hate in this thing.
Oh, yeah.
It's a multi-layered cake of hate.
Ooey gooey, put an extra egg in there or something to keep it nice and moist.
Yeah, don't you just love a moist hate cake?
And so he formed his ministry, struggling for years to build it into the juggernaut it's become. And how did he learn about the X-Men? Well, it's back to that whole Charles working with the fence thing.
Which is a whole thing he did, and may not have been for the best.
Yep, because Chris knows. Some higher up in the FBI went and passed all the information to Stryker.
Yeah, FBI is just federal cops.
The more he read, the more he became convinced that Xavier was the Antichrist.
Wait. So you're telling me Xavier is popular enough to be leader of the world? Because if I remember right, that's kind of something...
A condition.
Yeah, a condition. The Antichrist will be popular. See, I have to know this because I'm a Jew, and the real version of this guy wants my people to build the third temple, and that's a whole thing, and it's bad. It's really bad. And yeah, I know what these people are. They hate. They hate so much. They hate so much that they'll help other people do other kinds of hate.
He then receives a phone call from Anne's car phone reporting on Ilyana and Kitty. Without a shred of mercy, Stryker orders Pride slain, much to Aurora's horror. She screams, and even despite the power-dampening chair, a lightning bolt cuts the sky.
Ooh.
But she's helpless to do anything more. At Stryker's order, Anne and the others pull off the road before riddling the trunk with bullets until it looks like baby Swiss cheese.
That car was perfectly functional.
When they open the trunk, expecting to see the mutant girl's corpse, the purifiers instead find nothing but an empty trunk. Quickly, Anne pulls up her scanner, getting a ping off Pride, not far away now.
So, you can just scan for mutants?
Well, I mean, the X-Men have a mini Cerebro unit.
I suppose they have had that, haven't they?
Yes, they have.
And I guess if the X-Men can scan for mutants, why can't anyone else? Even if their mutant scanner looks like a television made in the 80s. A portable television made in the 80s.
Do they still make portable televisions?
No, digital kind of killed that. Basically, you need a stationary television for digital. Modern digital television just doesn't work with a moving television, so the digital transition killed them.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but fortunately, streaming also killed television, so...
Kitty flees through the dark and burnt-out streets of the Bronx.
And finds the Warriors.
She needs help and is relieved to see a fire. Kit Kat hustles over, calling for help, but the gang members she encounters are less than friendly.
Well, yeah, it's the 80s in New York, and that's a gang. They're not going to be friendly.
She turns to leave, but one of them grabs her, ready to have his way with the team.
Oh, no.
It's Anne who shows up to the unexpected rescue.
This has become a very strange rescue.
Sure, she wants to ace Kitty, but first she's going to have to deal with the gang members. With her gun drawn, she demands the men back off.
Not a great move. They seem like the kinds of people who would take those odds.
Yep, they're unwilling to listen, even with Annie packing heat.
Yeah.
It's a standoff, and a 6-1 at that. But that doesn't deter Anne from her mission. They do, however, distract her, and Kitty slips away while she can, sliding through a nearby wall. This infuriates Anne, who tries to fire on her, but it's too late. Kitty's through the wall now, and the situation has devolved into chaos. One of the gang members, Martin, chucks a knife into Anne's shoulder while she's distracted.
I mean, understandable, considering she's holding a gun on them.
It hurts, but at the end of it all, Anne is the one left alive while the gang members all fall, and she's still gunning for pride, ordering the other purifiers after the girl.
Of course.
Kitty emerges into an alleyway and tries to get her bearings the best she can. Not that she knows the Bronx or anything.
Yeah, she is in a part of town she has never been.
When she finds a bodega, she phases through the gated door, fishing some change out of the payphone before frantically dialing home.
I mean, you say fishing, she phases some change out of the payphone.
The phone rings 5 times before Kurt finally answers.
God, do you remember when phones were like this? I mean, picking it now, this is a problem that is so alien. For one thing, you need to find a payphone. For another thing, you need to have change.
For another thing, you have to have someone who doesn't have a voicemail set up.
Yes. And the worst. So, I don't think phones will ring forever anymore. Not unless...
That's what I'm saying. You have to have someone who doesn't have a voicemail.
Do those actually still ring forever? Well, can you just hear ring, 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 ring on a
Maybe
cell?
if you have a landline.
I think that's the only way you can have a forever ringing phone nowadays.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that on a mobile. I'm not sure.
Which means it's one of those little anxiety screws that can tighten as you just wait and wait and wait. And, of course, when you're calling a business, this is something you can stumble into.
Every time I ring the phone, I just go, don't pick up, don't pick up, don't pick up, don't pick up, don't pick up. That's a whole different anxiety
That's
thing.
understandable.
By then, Kitty barely has time to explain her situation before the bodega door explodes inward.
It's neat that she knows where she is.
Yet again, Pride phases just in time to avoid disaster. But she's got to get out of there. Spotting an elevated train, she doesn't just airwalk, she air runs. Coming up through the bottom of the train to finally collapse, panting on the floor. She's trying to explain the situation to an MTA cop when suddenly the ceiling explodes and in come the purifiers, opening fire on the officer rather than allowing Pride any protectors.
Okay, hold on. They just killed a cop.
Yes, well, not killed, injured.
Yeah, but... I mean, that's the biggest gang in the city. You don't hurt a cop.
There's no guarantee that he's necessarily one of their cops.
Well, no, I mean... It's NYPD.
Oh no, I see what you're saying now. I see what you're saying. You're gonna You're gonna whack the hive.
Yeah, the NYPD has offices all over the world. One of the biggest gangs anywhere. Doesn't matter if he's one of theirs or not. In fact, I'm guessing by his reaction, he's not one of theirs.
She knows her goose is cooked. She's too tired to phase, there's no getting away, so instead she just pleads for the officer's life. But the Purifier has no mercy for him either, instead intending to blame his death on Kitty.
Wow.
He never gets the opportunity. Suddenly the occupants of the train are sent tumbling as the train car is lifted from the tracks.
I wonder who did that.
Magneto demands their unconditional surrender.
That's fair.
But per the usual, it is not forthcoming.
Which is funny considering he controls the train car.
The whole bunch open fire. Of course, he's Magneto. Bullets aren't usually a problem for him.
Yeah.
That doesn't stop them from trying.
But I guess that gives them more fear.
At least until Mags destroys all their weapons.
And that's even more fear. They really tear apart those goons.
Yeah, they beat up the Purifiers.
They really beat up the Purifiers.
To shreds, you say?
Yes. And then Magneto pulls the bullet out of the guy.
Yeah, he pulls the bullet out of the guy and is like, it's fine now. And then, who is it that's like, no, he's not fine, actually. We had to take him to the hospital.
I think that's one of...
The Purifiers?
Yeah.
It's like, no, actually, he's not fine?
Wait, Magneto, why do you care about a regular human's life?
Maybe the people he's working with care about it.
Right. He's just trying to calm down his fellow Homo superior.
Well, I guess if I have to play along...
I might as well stop this man from bleeding a little bit. I mean, it's not really going to stop it, but it'll make them feel better.
Well, if they want to save the officer's life, they've got to act now. So they bind up the rest of the Purifiers from the subway, take the cop on a magic carpet ride, and fly off to the hospital. Meanwhile, it seems Philip has had a breakthrough with Xavier. He sits alone in his wheelchair in the darkness, when suddenly a figure enters sight, quoting scripture, asking him if he believes in the Lord, which Charles agrees that he does.
Huh.
The next question, does he embrace the word? Another emphatic yes. He also accepts the figure, Stryker, as the deliverer of that word. Stryker demands proof, and this is where Charles falters. Stryker reminds him of what Scott and Aurora are. Mutants.
That was probably a mistake.
But Chuck's heart aches. Those are his babies. And so it is back to scripture, reminding Xavier that he is not to love his children more than the Lord. And finally Chuck breaks, side-blasting both Scott and Aurora until their life signs cease, blood dripping from their noses.
Oh no.
Dr. Philip Ramsey finished up his work on Xavier right on time. He's got just enough time to change and shower before he's got to head off to Madison Square Garden for the Stryker Crusade's latest rally. So he climbs in a limo to catch a ride home to clean up, not expecting a dead girl to come phasing in through the ceiling.
That's fair.
Kitty slaps her hand over Ramsey's mouth, demanding his silence before managing to phase both of them out of the car. A first for the youngster.
Neat.
Philip tries to shove away, but a strong blue tail wraps itself around his neck, yoinking the doctor up into the air.
You know, that's a way to break a man's neck.
I don't imagine he did it, fast.
I guess it all depends on how fast Kurt was feeling.
Not that fast. He wants something from him. He needs info. Phil has no intention of speaking. At least not until Kurt brings his fangs to Ramsey's throat, threatening to kill him.
Right. Time to use that whole I look like a demon thing to his advantage.
And then all the doctor's courage runs straight down his leg.
Oh, he sure does.
Look at Kurt's little grin. I love it.
Yeah, he had fun with this. He hammed it up. He was having fun with this. Kurt, people are dying. You're having fun.
Anyway, back at the Stryker building, two men load up the dead bodies of the mutants onto a cart. They're on their way down to the incinerator when Anne happens by, deciding to accompany them. just in case. When the group enters the elevator, they find it already occupied by a guard and young Ilyana.
This is starting to get very coincidental.
Very crowded. But before too long, all involved begin traveling not down to the basement, but up.
Huh.
Anne knows something's wrong, but before she can do anything, her gun flies out of her hands, magnetized to the wall.
Shocking.
The control panel won't work, but Anne doesn't give up, determined to escape to warn Reverend Stryker.
Good luck. You look like you're about to go on a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory ride.
If you want to rove you paradise.
That's what they're doing.
She finally manages to wrench the doors apart just as the elevator bursts out of the roof. If she doesn't act now, her opportunity is forever lost. So Anne leaps out the open doors onto the roof, narrowly avoiding a nasty fall. That first step's a doozy.
Yeah.
As Anne heads back inside, Mag sets his cargo down on the roof of the World Trade Center.
We really like that building, folks.
It's iconic, right?
Yeah, it speaks to New York so clearly. What would New York be without it?
And importantly, also flat.
Yes. Yeah, I suppose putting it on the Art Deco,
the Chrysler building, we'd have some problems.
No, I think there are several people here who would be perfectly happy with impaling some of the goons on an Art Deco building.
Spirit on top of the Empire State Building.
Yes.
He's disheartened to find only one survivor inside, though Pyotr and Ilyana are gladly reunited. But before anyone can get to too much grieving, Logan speaks up. His senses are telling him something totally different from Ramsey's machines. They say Scott and Aurora aren't dead, just in stasis, and if someone could give the pair a jolt, they might just be able to revive them.
Huh.
Luckily, as we've covered, Magneto can do that.
Oh, right. He can also do electricity.
So he manipulates electromagnetic currents until he summons up a jolt to wake the sleeping X-Men. It works like a charm, Magneto proposing that Xavier just couldn't bring himself to kill his X-Men.
Of course not. He's Charles Xavier. He wants child soldiers, not dead child soldiers.
Well, they're not children, but hey.
I know, and one of them was very much his child soldier.
That's his baby boy.
Yeah, it's my baby child soldier. I can't kill him.
Instead, creating the illusion of death in the pair. When they awaken, they, and particularly Scott, are confused.
That's fair.
Why would Magneto save them?
Why is he here?
He doesn't even go here.
He doesn't even go to this school.
Mags explains that they aren't really enemies. They just stand in the way of his vows of world domination.
You know, little things.
Just that.
But come on. We should be ruling the world. We should be everything those religious fundamentalists fear.
He then points out how well things are working out for them, risking their lives for an ungrateful world on the reg.
That is the alternative, isn't it?
Scott counters that a mutant dictatorship isn't any good either, and Mags does not care for his tone at all, stating that he's lived under a dictatorship, lost his family to a dictatorship, but his will be a benevolent rule where people will want for nothing.
Hey, Magneto, that doesn't make dictatorship good. You can't fix dictatorship. You can't.
Scott again argues that anyone can make a utopia for one generation, which can they?
No.
But how do you make it last? By drafting the X-Men in on your plan, of course.
Well, see, that's why he's trying to get... He's going on a recruitment drive. That makes sense.
But they've got important business to deal with first if he's ever going to get to be a mutant dictator, so let's go deal with Stryker.
Yeah, we kind of gotta kill that guy, don't we?
We next meet up with our journalist friend John Cheever outside of Madison Square Garden before what is to be the sermon of Reverend Stryker's ministerial career.
Oh boy, I think I'm starting to get an idea what is about to happen.
Invitations have gone out to politicians across the country, with few refusing, But there has been a small but increasing pushback by other religious leaders against the increasing vitriol of the Stryker Crusade.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked that there might be other religious figures who have problems with some of this.
Feeling that he's beginning to take it too far in his quest to single out a marginalized group, likening it to the Nazi persecution of Jews during the Holocaust.
Ooh, boy.
Stryker has pushed back on that, but inside we know better, as the Reverend himself coaches Charles through the task of exterminating all the mutants. He's constructed a cerebro-like gadget made to amplify his brainwaves so he can seek out the minds of mutants and destroy them.
Amazing.
Just then, Anne bursts in, frantically explaining what happened back at the Stryker building, but Billy Boy himself is unconcerned. He's got the Lord on his side, after all.
Also, if you think about it from his perspective, what'd they do? Collect some corpses? What can they do?
Good point. At the pulpit, Reverend Stryker's sermon begins, speaking of how God created man and woman and how that has been the case up until now. We then meet another of the attendees of today's rally, one of the fine but unnamed senators of the country, already troubled by where this is going, to which I would ask, why, bitch, you came here? Did you have no inklings of what this guy was about?
Well, there is no social media, so there's not a lot for him to be told.
You just come here because you thought it would be disadvantageous to your political career to turn him down?
Yes.
Either way, Stryker continues, stating that while man is a divine creation, mutants are an affront to such divinity.
So what are aliens? Because sometimes there are aliens, and what are they?
Great question. Stryker doesn't have an answer for that. Bible didn't say anything about them, but the Bible also didn't say anything about mutants. Scientists say it's just evolution, and I'm sure you can imagine what Stryker thinks about that shit.
Oh no, evolution battles, not again, not again.
Not a whole hell of a lot of good, that's for sure. First they say we're descended from monkeys. They don't. Next they say our kids will be freaks. Curse you, science! No mutation is not natural. It comes from hell, I tell you, hell!
Jesus Christ. I don't even know if you're paraphrasing the comic. I remember far too much stuff like that from when I was younger.
I'm not too far off.
Oh.
I'm pretty damn close.
Though I especially like that bottom panel of once the suit blends into the background.
Yeah, that's nice. I never even noticed that. That's a nice touch.
At first, he's apart from it, but the further down the page we go, the more he's
lost in his own blackness.
Yes.
Back behind the scenes, someone throws a switch, and out on the streets, things begin to happen. A boy collapses to the ground, clutching his head, while the X-Men grip theirs in pain as well. The boy's bleeding from the nose, and on further examination, Kurt is now bleeding from the ears.
That's bad.
They've got to do something, but as Wolvie points out, if they attack, they'll be doing it on live TV. They're caught between a rock and a hard place. That's when Magneto chooses to make his entrance to the arena.
Well, Magneto doesn't really care about, playing to a crowd. He's fine with that, actually.
And he tears the roof off the garden as he calls out Stryker before replacing it behind him.
Good Lord.
The senator in the crowd watches as Stryker begins to rail against Magneto, likening him to the great horned beast, yet again wielding scripture like a weapon. But not just that, as he starts talking about real fire and brimstone, about God casting him into a lake as such. Someone behind the scenes reconfigures the Psybeam, focusing its power on Mags. It doesn't kill him, though it does blast him from the air, tossing him into the crowd and throwing the helmet from his head.
Oh boy.
Reverend Stryker continues to rail on about the evils of mutanity, how America has become a sinful nation and must pay for their transgressions with blood, riling the crowd into a frothing rage. They attempt to close in on Magneto, but even dazed, he manages to force them back with his powers, knowing that in his weakened state, it won't last.
Yeah, even he can't stop everyone.
It's a shocking sight for many around to see. The cops in the crowd, for one, get to work forcing the crowd back away from the fallen mutant, while the senator looks on in horror, disturbed by Stryker's call for Mutanity's execution.
Oh, man.
Even as he, too, begins bleeding from his ears.
Oh, boy.
Mutant spotted.
Mutant Senator.
Backstage, the X-Men desperately begin their fight towards Xavier, convinced that if they can get him away from Stryker's machine, they can save the day.
That's not that simple.
They're gonna have to fight their way past roughly a bajillion purifiers to do so.
You know, the fact that these guys are perfectly willing to just kind of carry dead bodies around their own complex, this is a terrible work environment, right? Like this must be like the worst place to work at.
I get the sense they're volunteers.
That's worse, actually. That is worse.
They're all suffering under the gadget's influence as well. It's not looking good. Luckily, one of their number doesn't have any such need to deal with the guards. Kitty phases straight through them, on a mission to phase through the machine. But Xavier feels her coming and side blasts the girl.
Wow.
So it's no good. Meanwhile, Anne rushes towards the pulpit, determined to warn the Reverend of the goings-on backstage. She manages to do so, but collapses, clutching her head. In shock, she realizes her nose is bleeding. All this time, and she's been a mutant. She pleads for mercy from Stryker, but while she is sorry, he's unwilling to intercede on her behalf.
Of course not. He's got a purity of hate.
Shoving her away from him and backwards, she falls off the pulpit, and the TV cameras catch every frame of her fall down to the floor of the garden, where her neck twists at an unnatural angle. And then Anne finally falls still.
Whoops. You know, my guy, the world just watched you push a woman off a stage and she died. That's not great.
Bad look.
Not great for you.
No, not good.
And that's at the very least manslaughter? I think there's a case for murder here.
Agreed. I mean, like, that's if everybody doesn't hear about what the fuck happened backstage with Charles Xavier.
Well, sure, but the X-Men might want that to be kept secret to an extent.
Yeah, agreed.
Whereas this is Reverend Stryker here getting arrested and convicted of murder. And the proof is probably on VHS. Actually, it might be on beta, considering that's what television studios used. Pneumatic. But it was better for production. It was better quality.
Yes. From his place on the floor, Magneto speaks up, asking if all who oppose him must die.
Ooh.
Only riling the crowd around him further into a rage.
He's fine with that.
They surge around him, ready to attack Magnus, but for the few cops standing in the way, warding them back with their sidearms.
I'm kind of amazed these cops are willing to let Magneto, roof remover, to just leave. He could just go. He took the roof off, he put it back on, and it's fine.
Take a walk, Buster.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Never mind that Madison Square Garden might actually need billions in renovation because he did take the roof off the building, and just because
I think they realize, how the fuck are we gonna arrest this guy, maybe?
Well, right now, he might not be able to stop them. And for, about an hour, they can be the cops who arrest Magneto.
Suddenly, the chaos behind the scenes and in front of them collide as an explosion back behind the curtains draws the attention of the camera crew. They notify the police, but of course they stay right where they are, getting that nice juicy camera footage of everything going down.
Yeah.
They are still missing, of course, the juiciest of things. Backstage, things have gotten desperate, and Logan seeks approval for his next play. They've got to let him and Kurt try to take out Xavier.
Oh boy.
Scott gives him the sign, and the pair bamf away before he fires a blast off. They arrive at Xavier's back, and he, of course, immediately deals with them.
That was easy.
What he doesn't deal with is the ricochet blast that's been bouncing its way across the room until it finally lands home on his dome, knocking Xavier to La La Land.
Okay, that is a great set of frames.
I love how it connects.
Uh-huh. But that is gorgeous.
With the power source taken care of, Cyclops scrags the machine with a sweeping optic blast, and the day would seem to be won. Except for one thing. Stryker himself.
I mean, hey, he might still get arrested, or, Magneto might just murder him.
And Scott's not ready to go until they deal with him, because this won't be the last they've heard of Reverend Stryker and his purifiers if they don't deal with it now.
Yeah, I'm reasonably confident there's still a going concern these days.
After putting that out there, the others are all with him. They emerge from behind the curtain, out onto the pulpit, before the watching crowd and the stunned Reverend, who definitely didn't expect to see at least two of their number there.
Yeah, that's a little unexpected for him.
Cyclops steps up to the microphone and calls Stryker out for the deaths of the children on the playground a few days back, asking if he'd do that to someone for any other quality of their life. And Stryker answers that whatever those other qualities, those people, still human, better than can be said of the X-Men or those children. Scott doesn't much care for that answer, likening the abilities granted to them to those of a gifted physician, physicist, philosopher, or athlete. He then counters that, well, maybe we're all human and you're the mutants.
Boy.
And that pisses the Reverend right off. And here's a fun panel that everyone recognizes.
I have seen this panel.
So this one did the rounds on social media because of how much Reverend Stryker looks like Mike Pence.
Oh, that's why I've seen it.
And it really works, doesn't it, now that you've mostly read the comic?
And I mean, Mike Pence was not a good person.
No.
He's still not a good person, but he probably didn't deserve a murder squad riled up by the sitting president to get him killed, which is very much a thing he did, which is why Mike Pence is not on the Republican ticket, because he was the vice president for the man who tried to have him killed.
How sure do you think he's got to feel right now? The same people who are chanting for his death are now wearing, ear patches in sympathy for a guy who got a boo-boo on his ear.
I mean, Mike Pence was a real traditional politician, so probably not great.
I'd be pretty sour about it.
I mean, man's probably fuming about a lot of things that happened. He was supposed to be the leash around Trump's neck. He was not.
No. He was outraged, pointing at Nightcrawler, that Scott would call him a human.
And Nightcrawler, I'm not worried about human or not. I'm worried about your posture. If you stand like that all the time, you're gonna end up with back pain, hip pain. It's just gonna hurt. Trust me. I'm coming from a point of, maybe not love, but a back pain understander. Do not slouch like this. I promise you, it will end badly.
Ariel stands up for her friend, though, fists clenched with righteous fury, speaking up for his kind and decent nature. After all the fear she's gone through with him, at this point, she's at, I hope to be half the person he is. But when she says that she chooses Kurt over believing in Stryker's version of God, that's too much for the Reverend.
Of course it is.
And he draws his handgun from the pocket of his suit jacket, pointing it at the X-Man.
It's a big gun.
A bang sounds through the garden. And Stryker drops his gun, clutching at his chest. One of the cops running security for the event shot the Reverend.
Oh, man. Yeah, I told you. Biggest gang in the city.
I mean, he was about to shoot an unarmed kid right in front of thousands of people.
He was, and that really must have peaked the mic on the television camera. I don't actually know how that era of television camera works when it comes to sound, but I can only imagine. Just imagine watching this on television, because this is big television. You're watching this live, and let's see how. Okay, a guy rips the roof off Madison Square Garden. And now we've got gunshots. Are they still airing? Is this still on television?
The recording light's on.
I know that part. They're still, of course, still recording. This is going to win people awards. But is this being aired on television still? After a woman fell to her death on live television.
Great question.
Yeah. Did anybody actually see someone shoot Stryker? Or did they cut once a woman fell to her death?
Great questions. They then let the X-Men go free. A few days later, and Magneto is still hanging around, watching TV with them. What's up with that, Chuck?
Well, it's not like he has anywhere to really be right now.
And I guess he's got extra space.
Yeah, there's that empty room.
Yeah. Anyway, Cheever's on screen talking about how Stryker was arrested. Of course, painting it as religious persecution.
My guy, you killed one person and tried to shoot another person on live television.
Tried to kill many more beyond that.
Yes, but you actually did kill someone on live television. Religious persecution. Your right to what? Push people off stages and break their neck?
Mags is unimpressed with the victory, hoping the X-Men now see that he's right. And Charles, for once, budges, stunning the rest of his X-Men. He is exhausted with a lifetime of futilely attempting to change the world. And now, he was almost pushed into murder. That's when Scott steps up, still firm in his inspiration with Xavier's dream. Quote, "I won't accept that, Charles. Granted, times are tough for us, and they'll probably get a lot worse. Granted, we could probably conquer the world, though the cost in blood would be staggering. But don't you see, either of you, we're human too. A different branch, perhaps, but the same basic tree. Such a fundamental shift in attitude can't be imposed. To have any meaning, it must grow from within. You brought us together to fulfill a dream, Charles, one born out of hope and the noblest of human aspirations. And we've sweated and bled, and some of us have died to make it a reality. I'm not prepared to give up. The means are as important as the end. We have to do this right or not at all. Anything less negates every belief we've ever had, every sacrifice we've ever made."
Oh boy. Though, I'm kind of wobbling my hand on the one born out of hope and the noblest of human aspirations. Y'all, Scott, I know you believe that, but these two catty liberals are also doing it out of spite for each other. So, that's not very noble.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that, isn't it?
Yeah, but, I mean, what's the...
We got a true believer here.
And also, you can't look at your dad and say, oh, clearly he's just being petty about something he clearly believes deeply about.
Mags is disappointed as hell to hear all this, and he holds out his hand to Charles instead, hoping his old friend will join him at his side. But Charles cannot bring himself to give up on his students if they're still willing to fight. An embittered Magneto turns for the door, flying out into the night. He hopes the X-Men pull it off, but he's waiting in the wings, baby! Charles feels such shame for his moment of doubt, but according to his students, there's no need, and he dabs his tears away with a given handkerchief as Scott and Aurora step out onto the balcony for a moment. She is beyond proud of him for his words at the garden and just earlier in the sitting room. She suspects that he even became the teacher there for a moment.
Also, the way Scott and Aurora are,
Vibes.
Are they not a thing?
They're practically a thing.
Like
here.
between that,
they're holding hands, a kiss on the cheek.
They're not just holding hands, the way they're holding each other. This is an unannounced something that, in a lot of ways, is visually closer than Scott really got to his actual dead girlfriend.
Scott and Aurora are an underrated pair.
I can see that.
He shrugs off her praise, claiming that Xavier was in need, so he helped him, because that's what it's about to him. It's about love. Aurora kisses him on the cheek, and the two just hold each other on the balcony as the rest begin to file out to join them. Not in the holding hands, just on the balcony.
No, they're all start holding hands. Definitely. Yes, that's what's happening.
Anyway, that's one of my favorite X-Men stories. How'd you like that?
Wow. That is... I think I have to give that a 5.
I'm with you. I'm at a 5 as well.
Like, it still has... I would I would have waited a little longer before I kill and then unkill some of my characters, but maybe that's just me. That feels more like a Chris Claremont foible that he stumbles into, he seems to like, and I suspect we're going to see a lot more of that over time.
To be fair, there were actually a couple issues between this, but because of some weird continuity issues, I had to unstick this in time a little bit.
That makes sense.
So there would have been 2 issues before this.
That would help. That would help at least a little, but I feel like this is a thing Claremont likes to do. He likes to make you think, such and such is dead. But wait, such and such is not dead.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of fake outs. I can think of one prominently in the Dark Phoenix saga where Scott died and then was immediately back to life the next issue.
This is a Chris Claremont thing, and I only really notice it because of how back to back they are, and I suppose they weren't originally, and I still think this is worthy of a 5. It just has some of its foibles, and I'm not even sure the warning made a lot of sense.
No, I'm not even willing to dock at stars for Kitty dropping the N-word.
The warning does not make a lot of sense, unless you're talking about the Christian fundamentalists. Which I don't think they are.
No, I think it was just a generically applied warning that really could have used a bit more care.
We put a slur in our comic, and now we gotta apologize for it. That's what that means, right? That's how that works.
It was a stereotype.
What? What?
It's not what that word means.
That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Before we go, we should probably remember to do our plugs.
The format of this graphic novel is screwing everything up.
We usually do our stuff in the middle, so a little thrown off here. If you have any comments on John's hot takes, there are a couple places you can hit us up. One, there's down in the comments, but down below. You can also hit up the buttons, like, subscribe, hit that motherfucking bell button. You can hit us up on social media. We are on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook.
And we do call it Twitter.
Yes, we do call it Twitter. I'm not calling it X. I refuse to call it X. Sorry.
In fact, the thing you do is say, "Oh, do you mean Twitter?" You correct anyone who says it wrong.
Oh, I like that. I like that very much.
Oh, because they're assholes.
You can also hit us up on email. We are comicsplaining@gmail.com. If you'd like to throw us a couple bucks, we are over on Coffee. And that's going to be it for us this week. We look forward to talking to you next time.